Folks, it'd make it a little bit easier if you all could come to the front. And also, since we want to hear from you, we're going to be asking when you have a question so everybody can hear, if you could use the microphone. The reason for that is they are recording this, and they're just trying to get all the information to share it. So could people in the back please come closer to the front, please? Ah, very good. Board members in the audience, Beatrice is here, and Judith Davis, did I see her? Folks, thank you for being here this evening. We know it's a little chilly outside. My name is Kevin Kastner. I am a director for BWP, which is a search firm whose base office is in the Midwest. It was started in the early 90s when there were 3 firms, and you don't care about the names of the firms, so we just call them black, white, purple. And we have 50 associates all across the country that are involved in superintendent searches. Why are we here in Rochester? I think because the board, when they were screening different firms, there are certain things that we have with our team that we think can help us be very effective in trying to find you a new superintendent. One of the reasons for that, we've got Paul McKendrick over here, a colleague of mine who's been involved in other searches. He's been a superintendent in Lynchburg, Virginia, a diverse system, and in Tuscaloosa, where the University of Alabama is. And Paul also is a graduate and did all his doctoral work at Harvard. Another colleague is Dr. Percy Mack. Percy Mack hails from Georgia, has worked in some of their bigger systems, but was superintendent in Dayton, Ohio, when Dayton, Ohio was 614th out of 614 as a low-performing school system when he arrived, and had over a 30% increase in graduation rates from the 50s to the 80s. And so he has experience in turnaround and many years as a superintendent, because he also went to Columbia, South Carolina. And now he works with doctoral students, South Carolina, and where else? South Carolina State. My name is Kevin Kastner, and I am a former superintendent from Albemarle County in Charlottesville, Virginia, where I spent there several years. And since that time, in addition to doing over 30 superintendent searches, I own a company called Cambridge Strategic Services that has been involved in over 1,000 strategic plans across the country in the last several years. Also had the honor, when they did Race to the Top, I was one of the peer reviewers, and it ended up New York was one of the successful applicants, and signed my name off to $600 million a few years ago with another group of people, in which you beat out a lot of other states when that grant was going through. And so I learned a lot about the state of New York and also all the different things in the school system. Over 25 years superintendent experience will help us in trying to vet a candidate and understand their credibility to work in your system. One way you might look at this, there are 18,000 school systems in the United States. 1% have 20,000 students or more. You're in that 1%. And in that 1%, you have the type of diversity, you have the type of poverty, you also have the type of resources in a great community. So a lot of people could be great superintendents, but they won't necessarily have this type of experiences to have all the multiple programs that you know about. When we come to visit a community like we're doing in 3 days, this is our 10th meeting today. We've already met upward to 100 people. And we're trying to capture your voices, and we record them verbatim, and we will report back to the board in 2 or 3 weeks' time about everything that we heard in these meetings and try to get a pattern of what are the strengths of the public school system, what are the challenges, and what are the qualities and characteristics people are looking for a successful superintendent. In addition, there is an online survey that if you go to the website and you can invest about 10 minutes time, it also is going to ask you to rank different things as an order of importance. We already have over 225 people, and it hasn't been up very long. So I suspect that that number is going to get a lot larger, and we compare the quantitative data from the survey with the qualitative data that you share with us. We've learned a lot in our meetings today. This is our 3rd time coming to Rochester. It's a little colder this time. I'm hearing it's going to be a little colder tomorrow too. But the question that we hear, 5 superintendents in 10 years, what's going to make this one different? Certainly, the board knows their most important job is to try to find the best leader. There's a different body of evidence that's going to have a significant impact in this superintendent process, and that's the Distinguished Educators Report. That information, as it's been presented, is something that the public is aware of, candidates are aware of it, and all the people in the community are aware of it. And so someone coming in doesn't have to go through a 6-month study to hear what people are thinking about Rochester. There's a response to that report that the school system will do with the board that will be coming out around February 8th. And how that information then is used, in addition to our report in engaging the community and hearing what they're thinking, that also begins a game plan for how the board and the superintendent are going to work together for the children, which is what it has to be about. And so, that being out there, the type of leader you're going to find that's going to work with the board is going to have to make a significant commitment to this community. And that's what we're trying to do, if anything, is to give the board some potential candidates that they're going to have a tough time picking out which one. But the board is doing something else that I think is a positive. First, all of these meetings and all the information in our reports are public record. They can be available as the board chooses to put them on your website. But the board also is going to have the finalists, whether it's 2 or whether it's 3, have a day in the community, and to get to know the community and the community know them. And that feedback was 1 minute after they're announced. Anyone's going to check up on them and see how successful they are from wherever they come from, or if they're here, how they do here. That's where everybody in this community needs to weigh in with your board members. We're going to go through our process and do the candidates. You live here. And so be engaged in this process beyond the time you're investing to come to this meeting, which is great, is more than a few months. The search closes for the candidates that are going to apply on March 10th. About a week or so thereafter, the board will have their first initial set of interviews, so then we are up to about April, beginning of April. During the month of April, the board will end up deciding who the finalists would be. They'll vet the finalists with all the references and everything, and then decide as they make them public. And once they receive the feedback from the public, watch them as they engage with the community, they'll select someone that they think is the right leader, and that person will begin negotiations. And by the end of April, on that timeline, they would be announced, and then it would be decided how soon they could come to work, with the goal being July 1 at the latest. So that's the way the process works at this point in time. So there's a lot of things that are going to be happening in February. The response to the Distinguished Educators Report, our report, and then as we have all our advertisements out, we already are getting applicants, and we'll continue to do our job. Based on that, before we now want to spend the rest of the evening hearing from you, does anyone have any questions? I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Mack, who's going to remember, which I didn't do last time, to repeat the questions, or Percy, if they go up to the mic, they might not need to do that. And we would like, well, I'm going to let him tell you how we're going to do this. Percy?
Good evening, everyone. We're going to make this painless. Basically we have 3 questions for you. 1, what do you feel are the strengths of Rochester schools? 2, what do you feel are the challenges? And 3, what are the characteristics you would like to see in the next superintendent? I'll repeat those. The strengths, the challenges, and the characteristics you would like to see in the next superintendent. All right. Who wants to lead us off? And you can pick any direction you want to go in. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
challenge here, and it's certainly hard for a child who's coming from a home where maybe they haven't had enough to eat
Sure.
before they got to school. They're distracted, and perhaps they might not have a strong support system, unfortunately, within their family. But on the other hand, the community has provided many financial resources per student in this school district to, in some measure, try to overcome the unfortunate issues that many of the students face.
Okay, so you have, let's do those three things. You feel like the teachers are doing a good job and they're a well-educated workforce as a strength, correct?
I hope they're doing a good job.
Okay, all right. Secondly, you feel that the community supports those students who are needy or who have support issues at home. That's a strength.
The taxpayers do.
Okay, all right, that's community, all right. And one of the challenges you see is poverty as a challenge for those students who don't have the necessary supports at home.
Absolutely.
Okay. Are you picking her up? Okay. Is that it for you? Oh, okay. You got some others. Okay.
Yeah, I would just like to say that whoever you end up choosing among your candidates, I just hope that they have the ability to really build a good supportive culture in the district, because that has been mentioned in the Distinguished Educator Report, but I think is the biggest challenge this district has is that all the people from the top down need to feel like they're supported and that their work's valuable so that we can retain staff at all levels, good staff, and that they would be here for the long haul.
All right, so a supportive, you want to see the superintendent, one of the characteristics is that he is supportive of the workforce,
well,
correct?
He or she
yes.
builds a culture that is supportive and that everybody within the school districts they've worked in feel that sense of they're part of a team, they're supported. And I would also say somebody who's committed to working on things that are already going on within the district that are successful, and not somebody that's going to flip the table and say, let's make my mark, let's do something completely new. They need to be transparent and able to follow through on things that are already going on and not feel like I don't own that. That's the past administration, because we've seen too much of that. It's been a real hamper on progress here. So somebody that's willing to take on something that they didn't create themselves.
Okay, so a person who's willing to work with a continuous with the district, and someone who is a team builder. All right, yes, sir.
So some of us want to talk about what we know to be one of the greatest challenges in this district, and therefore characteristics that the next superintendent and any superintendent will have to have. Systematic and institutional racism, as well as individual racial and social conditioning, are concrete barriers to respectful relationships. The foundation of creating within the district, the foundation of creating within the district, creating equity, within the district, must therefore begin with addressing racism. Page 49 of the Distinguished Educators Report. So this is not Howard Eagle speaking, that's from Dr. Aquino, directly from his report. So we know that individual institutional structural racism is a major issue and problem in this district. We know that the issue of mandatory anti-racist education and professional development has been discussed in this community for decades, and we know that people are skirting that issue, and we know that part of the maintenance and perpetuation of systematic and institutionalized racism is that the president of the Rochester Teachers Association says we can't even use that language. He says we can't use the language of anti-racist education because if we do, we will offend white teachers. This is him talking. This is the president of the Teachers Association. And so we have a situation in which, according to him, we want to talk about a reality, but we have to call it something else because we're going to offend white teachers. Never addresses how it's going to make black teachers or Hispanic teachers or the few Asian or indigenous teachers we have, how they're going to feel. We can't imagine that they would be offended by discussing anti-racist education. All we mean is working against racism, identifying how it's manifested in the system, in the rules, policies, practices, procedures, the reality of what happens in classrooms, in the curricula, and just about every aspect of the institution, and then working against that. That's what anti means. And so if somebody's feeling offended by that, they have the issue and the problem. And so we got to talk about it. We know that you all agree that you agree with us that there are some things, such as what I'm mentioning now, that must be mandatory for everyone and that there's research to back this position up. We know you believe that because you've been saying it to people. And so we're glad to hear that. And so the superintendent, the next superintendent and every superintendent must be ready, willing, and able to address individual institutional racism straight, head on, and thoroughly. Now, we want to mention that, and the we I'm speaking of is our coalition in particular, Take It Down Planning Committee, Faith Community Alliance, Movement for Anti-Racist Ministry and Action Coalition, and our allies in this community. We've been very active around this issue. So we know a lot of stuff in this school district passes for so-called anti-racist education, but it's not called that. Like the president says, it's not called that. We're talking about stuff like culturally relevant pedagogy, cultural competence, restorative justice, the so-called Victorious Minds Academy, retreats for the Board of Education. These things are all supposedly aimed at anti-racist education. But we want to mention, and I'll stop on this point, what we believe to be the most authentic initiative in the Rochester City School District in terms of addressing individual, institutional, and structural racism. That is the REAL team, the Racial Equity Advocacy Leadership Team. We want to mention that just last week, a resolution was passed by the Board of Education to make it a permanent entity in this school district. And so the next superintendent needs to be ready, willing, and able to work with the REAL team in terms of putting together a holistic, comprehensive racial equity action plan. People are serving on the REAL team who have knowledge and who are serious about addressing the tripartite beast of individual, institutional, and structural racism. A strength is that you have willing community members. You have knowledgeable community members. You have community members who are more knowledgeable than anybody who's working in the school district about the tripartite beast and who want to help produce a comprehensive racial equity action plan. And so it appears that some people in positions of power and authority don't want the help, even though they spew the rhetoric about all of us having to work together cooperatively and collaboratively and so forth. But when parents and others attempt to be engaged, and people don't want to be engaged in a way that is superficial. We want to be engaged in the decision making from the beginning to the end, especially since we have the expertise and they don't. So that's a strength.
All right, thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Mary Coffey. I'm a member of what is known as Many Neighbors Building Neighborhoods, and it's many, many neighborhood leaders throughout the city. Every sex, race, creed, sexual preference, we're all together for one reason: to make the city of Rochester a better place, and certainly a better place for our children to live. We are a part of the educational committee, and I'm also part of the public safety committee. And what we're here for, as I say, to make our children's lives better. I am also co-chair of the neighborhood that this school is in, East High School. And at one time, we had to bring in our mayor, our chief of police, the head of our school board, and our the security of the school department, because the children were leaving the school every day, in and out, doing drugs behind the buildings. We could get nowhere. Finally we worked with the bus company to help us pick up the children in front of the building. Point blank, it appeared to be quite out of control. State came in now. The U of R, with a wonderful principal here, or superintendent, it's the difference of night and day. It shows that it can be done in this city, and our children can get what they deserve. There's no way out of poverty in the city because there's no escalator for education to get up and out, and no escalator for jobs to get up and out. And we need a superintendent that understands that. And no longer can people just do what they want in our school district. It has to be under control with absolute accountability. And I'm very glad that the state has come in, and I hope you have a superintendent that will work with everyone. And the union has to realize, yes, you have to protect your teachers, but we are here for one thing: children, children, children. So do a good job for us, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Vicki Robertson. I'm a parent in the district. And I think when I think about strengths of the district, I think about individual schools and individual programs. There are good things going on in the district. I think probably every parent has a teacher at their school, something that's good. And we need to remember that there are good things. My kids right now are at Wilson, and I can't say enough great things about that school and what's happening with the International Baccalaureate program. Challenges, Howard nailed it. The institutional racism, the structural racism, the individual racism is huge. It's apparent. I get treated very differently when I go into any of the schools than my children's friends' parents. It's incredible, the difference. And that's just, I think, our biggest challenge. We also have a challenge of a culture of incompetence. It's very common to just, and I've done it myself, you're like, oh, well, it doesn't really matter. That's, whether it's the attendance system, hey, oh, well, I got the robocall, didn't get through, I don't care, and we saw consequences of that, or whatever. It's a very culture that says, good enough. And we need to find a superintendent who can transform that culture. So that kind of cultural change, someone who can be a leader of cultural change, is incredibly important, as well as Howard said, somebody that can work with the community to take advantages of the strengths in the community to lead that cultural change, that fight against racism, that fight against incompetence. I think it's also incredibly important that that person not be measured strictly by test scores. Test scores give us one slice of information, but they do not tell us the results of what is actually happening in our schools. The woman over there mentioned that East is transformed, is fabulous, and yet the test scores aren't all that much better. So it is better, but you can get better. It's so important to think about what's good for the children, and what's good for the children is not drill and kill test prep. And so we have to have other measures in addition to test scores that drive what we're doing. I also want to echo what Eamon said, that we need a superintendent who's willing to work with what is going right now. So identify those programs, whether it's the work with Joy DeGruy on anti-racism on the team that Howard mentioned, or individual schools that are doing well. Community school at School 17. There are places where things are thriving and doing well, and all too often, I know I have been part of that, this district just destroys successful schools because a new leadership came in. And we need somebody who's humble enough to say, there's things that are working here, and I'm willing to work with that, even though it wasn't my idea. It's not the way I would do it. But I can change. There's enough things to fix. They don't have to break things, too.
Thank you.
I was remiss. We do have a translator. If anyone would like that assistance, it is available. Yes, ma'am. Fine. I was just only saying if anyone would like to take advantage.
Thank you. My name is Sharon White, and I'm a part of the Ministers of God in the Backyard, is our group. And my concern for actually our concern from the backyards, we're concerned with the new superintendent, understanding that a lot of our students are dropping out at the age of 16. Let's just tell the truth. And before we can get to that point, when I was teaching before my injuries, a lot of us went door to door. A lot of teachers, we went door to door. We went and talked to the parents specifically, and now we don't hear that. We don't hear a lot of the teachers and people going door to door. And a lot of that is entailed with racism. People are struggling. Teachers are struggling. They're afraid, or whatever the case is. So I would like to see the new superintendent building on the groups that are already in existence, but having those groups work together. May it be the community, may it be teachers forming with the community, in enforcing. Like I believe she said this, the curriculum or the way students are learning today, a lot of them are learning through training programs, hands-on stuff. They're struggling with the test. So and a lot of kids are not coming to school because they're struggling with their education. Let's keep it honest. So I would like to see, let's just tell the truth, this new superintendent working from that perspective, trying to find out where the students are struggling at, why the students are not achieving, why are they dropping out. We got to look at, like, racism, poverty are huge in our community, but we really need to understand how to tackle a lot of the things people are not talking about. Why are kids dropping out? Why? Let's zero in on why are the attendance is what it is. And so my concern is if we can get some of the characteristics, or have a superintendent with characteristics of forming people who understand these kids, who really understand these kids, and really forming some groups to say, we're not here for the check. We're not here for the money. We're here to understand how we can get our children from achieving at a low rate to a higher rate by going into the parents' homes, working with the parents, saying, no, I'm not afraid, I'm not prejudiced, I want to come into your home, I'm not afraid of you, I don't feel like you're trying to attack us. We need to understand, no matter if you're white, Spanish, it doesn't matter. We need to work together. No matter how rich you look, how poor you look, we need a superintendent that's going to roll their sleeves up and say, listen, who is with me to help us go into the homes? Who's not afraid? So the characteristics of a superintendent that we're looking for from the backyard is somebody that's willing, that's in position, that's willing to work together from that perspective, because I know everybody's saying the same thing. We're just saying it in different ways. We need these issues to be dealt with, but we need to really recognize if we don't work together and come together, we know the high position superintendent is like, but we can't focus so much on the position rather than focus on the issues. And our students really want to learn. They really do, but we need to show them that we have an uncommon love. And so that superintendent need an uncommon love. And we're asking, it may not sound like everybody else, but I'm from the backyards. And we are tired, and we need to work together with the administrators. So that is one characteristic that we're looking for, that we can form a group of the superintendent can form a group of people that are not afraid to go in the backyards with us.
All right. So again, we're hearing team builder, we're hearing institutional racism, we're hearing poverty, and it's very important that everybody works together. The superintendent cannot come in here wearing an S on his or her chest and do it all by themselves. It has to be you and even more of you to tackle this issue, because it's going to take a team, and not just within the walls of the school district. It's going to take a team of community to really work together to move this district where you want it to be. It's not one of those things where you say, hey, welcome, glad you're here, and the superintendent never sees you again, or he never extends himself to you, or she. They need to do that as well. So thank you for your comments, several of you. Be right back to you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. My name is Pia Muller. I'm a parent in the district. A lot of what Howard and Eamon and Vicky and others have said resonates with me. So I want to sort of build on that. The number one strength is the students. We don't really say
Okay,
that.
students.
Students.
Number one strength, okay.
And we're not giving them the credit that they deserve. So I just want to hold that up. I think one of the major problems, going back to what Howard was saying, institutional racism, one part of that is the discrepancy between the student body and the teaching body in terms of the racial composition, in terms of their ethnic background, in terms of their socioeconomic background. So the question is how to bridge that divide or fix that divide or eliminate it. Anti-racist education is one way. Another way would be to find, or supplementing way, would be to find a superintendent that's also really committed to figuring out how to recruit and retain more teachers of colors, especially the ones who are already among us, the paraprofessionals. Why don't we do more to put them into teaching roles and help them get the credentials that they need to slip into those roles? I think when we talk about relationship building in the district, a lot of that happens with the paraprofessionals. That's my experience. That's what I've heard other parents say. One of the challenges, I think, is exactly what Eamon was saying, the turnover in leadership in superintendents. We've gone through, 4 or 5 in 10 years. And that means that these initiatives start up and then they get abandoned, right?
Right.
And I think that there are so many promising initiatives and promising programs that Vicki brought up. The new code of conduct, restorative practices, new focus on relationship building, all that can't just fall to the wayside because we get a new person with a different kind of vision, or that's too valuable to just let go of. So we want someone who's committed to that. And I also think we want someone who's really committed to the city and to the community, to actually living here. I don't know why there's not a residence requirement for this type of position. I think they should live among us, be part of us, not retreat to the suburbs at, 4 or 5 o'clock. And to me, that kind of long-term commitment that I would look for, to me, looks like a mid-career professional, not an end-of-the-year professional.
All right.
So, thank you.
Thank you. I want to take this opportunity to recognize our board chair, Attorney White's here. He's sitting right over here. Raise your hand. Thank you, sir. Thank you for being here tonight. Kevin, young lady right down front here had another point she wanted to make. Hold on. Mike's coming.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. You're Reverend, did you say you're a minister? Sharon? Oh. I want to say that Sharon, what you said, I thought really resonated with me, and I hope with everyone here, because you covered so many things that are so important about meeting the students where they are and the parents where they are, and that everybody has to work together. We can't be against each other. We have to be for the students and with each other in support of the students. And given all that, I don't know if it's permitted, but I'd like to turn the table on the folks that are facilitating this meeting. As I understood from the introduction, some of you have experience turning around school districts, that they may not be precisely the same as Rochester, but they may share many of the major characteristics that when you came in had the problems of poverty and historically what's gone on here. As part of the process, given your knowledge of personnel with this very special expertise, do you recommend to the district people you know, or would you even consider yourselves, if you feel your background and your experience is a good fit, as candidates and throw your hat in the ring?
My hat is off. I retired in 2014, but I can tell you, and Mr. White over here made some key points. I came into Dayton, Ohio in 2001. Dayton was the sixth most impoverished school district for child poverty in the United States of America. The mortality rate for African American male children under the age of 1 was double the national average. So the children who survived had some issues because of health care and other issues that they faced. One of the things that we had to establish as a community when I got to Dayton, Ohio, was that the superintendent could not do all of this alone. He had to have the community supporting all the efforts that we were doing. The ministers got on board, the business people got on board, the health services people got on board. We had an attendance problem, and the attendance problem was related to parents not sending their children to school. We did TV commercials with myself, the chief of police, and the judge. And what we said was, if parents do not get their kids to school, we were going to deal with the parents. We weren't going to deal with the children. We had attendance areas where parents could call in if they saw kids hanging around the city. We would go pick them up and bring them to school. 4 or 5 of them might be hanging out at the public library or hanging down to the grocery store. So it takes everybody. Everybody has to be willing to roll up their sleeves and fight. It's not going to take just the superintendent. Now, we have to get a superintendent, and that's what we're looking for, somebody who's open to everybody, to involve in everybody, to involve in all the groups that you have talked about here tonight. And those groups have to function, and they all have to function with children in mind. That's how you got to function. You have to function with children in mind. And that's how we were able to move that graduation rate from 52% to 82%, because we had more children graduating. We had a situation where children were reading 2 grade levels behind when they entered school. 2 grade levels behind. So when they got to 3rd grade to take the 3rd grade test, they were reading on 1st grade level. So were they going to pass the 3rd grade test? No, in most cases. But we got a reading initiative around the community, and people were reading to students everywhere. At the Boys and Girls Clubs, at church, at different organizations, people were reading to students, and students had to read to them. We had contests where kids were doing oratorical speeches and those kind of things to really put literacy in the forefront. And so it's going to take all of it. It's going to take the community groups who do the training to say, okay, we're going to come in and train some of these students in the healthcare areas. We started a diesel mechanic co-op, one of the few in the United States, where we train students to work on diesel on the big rigs And I tell you, you'd be surprised how many girls were involved in that program, because they were making $60,000, $70,000 a year working on those rigs. And so that it can be done. You have the resources in Rochester to do what you need to do. The question is, you have to do it. And it can't be one group. It can't be just white people doing it. It can't be just black people doing it. It can't be just Hispanic people doing it. Everybody got to do it. And that will cut out a lot of that racism and other stuff that you have. But as the gentleman said, you got to face the problem. You got to face it.
Encourage some of you that haven't had a chance to have comments. We're going to stay as long as you want to talk.
He is. Go ahead,
Evening,
sir.
everybody. By a quick show of hands, how many of you are from Rochester?
How many
Are
of you
from
are from Rochester? No,
Who-
born and raised
born
here,
and
I guess,
raised
is
in
what he's
Rochester
asking.
and born and raised and actually went to the city school district in Rochester. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 maybe. Now, by a quick show of hands, how many board members are in here right now? Board members. Board members. So we have 2, okay, and 2 just left. It was actually 4, sir. It was actually 4. It was actually a total of 4. So yeah, I mean, let me handle this. So at the same time, understand something that's going on right now. We have somebody who's actually, I think, 2 more days and then she's done. There's so many issues growing up in Rochester that if you're not from here, if you haven't went to school here, you don't understand. Mainly, you have to make a connection. And even now, I'm 29 years old, born and raised here, went to George Mather Forbes School number 4, Douglas, Edison, went to West Virginia University, graduated from Lock Haven in Central Pennsylvania, and I'm a success story compared to most of the youth that born and raised in Rochester. Now, at the same time, we need a superintendent that if you're going to give them $45,000 a year, they'll still take the job. Because what we're doing is we're spending all this money with somebody that can't even connect with the youth here. I've never seen my superintendent in my school. I've never seen my superintendent go to a classroom, hey, this is who I am. I can't spend much time here, but I'll be back. If you see me, you need anything, let me know. And there's a perpetual issue that keeps on taking place that we're really not taking heed to. Like, there is no bridging of a gap here. Like, you have to understand, as generations go on and go on and go on, things change. Like I stated at the last meeting on Broad Street, you can have somebody being bullied, and they can be bullied physically when you grow up. Now they're being bullied mentally, and it's the same thing, but it has a whole different aspect of how it affects a child. Now we're hiring these social workers. Don't get me wrong, psychologists, counselors, these things are needed. But I'm not going to show you my scars if you can't show me that you've been through the same thing, if you can't tell me or show me how I can get out of the situation. Like, why would I explain to you how I can get better if you never even been through it? Like the young lady that spoke, she had a child. And then luckily the Oasis program, she had people there that could show her, like, no, listen, you can do this, you can graduate, you can pass this test. And now, like, I go on the Oasis website, if I wasn't mistaken, Frank Arena, who was actually my shop teacher at Edison, is now teaching at Oasis. So they're taking bits and pieces of every school and they're just moving it to another program. Like at Edison, we had masonry, carpentry, sheet metal, electrical. They had cosmetology at one point, auto body, auto mechanics. Now these things aren't there. We have more after-school programs. Now these things aren't there. So when children get out, like I worked for the Rochester City School District in the summer my senior year. I had a job. I had co-op programs. I had things that were going to keep me busy, keep me out of the streets. But now these things aren't available. I don't know if any of y'all happen to look at the budget, the budget from 17-18 or 18-19. The first budget in 2017-18 was 735 pages. I read it twice. It had a lot of money being spent in places that it didn't need to be spent. Now, if you read last year's budget from 18-19, it dropped from 735 pages to 424, I believe. And these things aren't being addressed. Like the receivership, those schools that fall on that list get additional funding to bring their test scores up. So they don't even have to really be a part of the budget in that aspect because they're going to get their funding. But now it's so much that's wrong. Like the guy says it's a great community. Rochester's not a great community. It has potential. I'm not walking down the street by myself, and I'm not a small dude. And like we laugh, but it's serious. So we have these teachers that are scared of these students. We got to stop making these things seem like they're okay and everything is okay. Everything is not okay. We have the majority of people not even being from Rochester going to the school district. Where are the parents? Now, I know we have some here, and I'm not talking about you guys, but this is empty. This is empty. This is empty. Like this, when I was 17 years old, one of my good friends got killed right on the street. Parcells and Culver. Like this is not a good community. It has the potential to be. This is not a good school district. It has the potential to be, but when all these schools, they run in their own entity. Wilson is a school of itself. Edison is a school of itself. East is a school of itself. They have their own programs. Like, I shouldn't have to go on the Rochester City School District website and see some of the things I do. It's unprofessional. Like, if you look at their email addresses, he has a legal brief email address. Somebody has a Yahoo. Somebody doesn't even have one. They should all be uniform. Rochester City School District. Like, they shouldn't say things. That's what I'm saying. I need a superintendent that's going to 7 days a week, you got to know that you have a job to do. This is not just Monday through Friday, 7 to 3, 8 to 4. You have a job to do, and it's going to take more than just 5 days a week. Like, I need a superintendent that's going to know, like, hey, if I'm going to some schools on Thursday and every fourth Thursday, I got this board meeting, I still got to be at that board meeting, even if it starts at 6:30, and I've been up since 6:30 this morning, 5 o'clock. You have to know that this is more than just some part-time gig. I'm going to make some money, put it on my resume. These test scores go up a little bit, and then I'm out. Not at all. And so that's what we're dealing with. So the first thing is we got to get more parents here. Superintendent has to figure out a way to add more parents and community members into these meetings because the population that we're actually taking this off of is not very big at all. So, I mean, if you see we have some teachers, we have some professionals. I have nieces and nephews in the school district. You see what I'm saying? I don't even have kids. So even me speaking is a different part of the population. So you have to first and foremost, I don't know if you got to get in touch with the news or whatever the case may be, but you have to get more people in the community in here. You can go and ask some people if they even know what receivership is. They might say no. Like that's what I'm saying. This is not a broad overview of what it is. Everybody's not taking responsibility for the situation. And no matter whose fault it is, we have to fix it. Board of Education has to fix what they're doing because it's absolutely unacceptable. Absolutely.
Thank you very much for your points. Well done.
I'm David, and my comments are basically a question because that comes down to the step one right here, getting the input from the community. And we seem to be nodding our heads to the gentleman's point that the turnout here is not satisfactory. So the point that I would like to make is, what are you doing at the beginning step of this process to get the grassroots folks involved in the input that you need to hear? I mean, I'm not saying this input is not relevant.
Right.
But I'm saying that there's a whole community out there, and I know because I've walked the streets to, I mean, I don't know the community. I won't claim that, but I've walked it in order to get a wonderful person elected to this board. And what are you going to do with this house being small to engage more people in this conversation? Because if you don't get that input, you're going nowhere. The other point I would like to say, it's grassroots. A number of us have been in favor of a grassroots group to help move this along with the Board of Education, which was not accepted. But because it was said that the BWP would get to the grassroots. Well, it must happen. If you're going to get this job going, it has to get going now. And racism is an issue. I work on the REAL team. It's a district committee called the Racial Equity Advocacy Leadership Team, and also through some other anti-racist work that I've done here in the community the last 2 years as a white person. Very difficult to talk about race, but you know what, sir? You know this. You've got to say it. You've just got to say it, and then you got to talk about it with people of color and Latinos and each other and get it out on the table. Make your mistakes, because white people don't like to make mistakes. They're afraid that they might look bad if they say something wrong. Well, we've got to get this thing out in the open and talk about it. So my point about the superintendent is, it's got to be a person that's going to generate, mobilize, inspire that kind of conversation.
Thank you. And let me say this, you know, this is not, we would like for every seat in this auditorium to be filled. We would. But we are getting good information from the people who are here. And I appreciate each and every one of you who came out this evening to share with us. Wish it was more. But we got to work with the ones who come with. Like Kevin said, we've talked to over 100 people a day in different settings, ministers and business people. And, you know, so we're, and we have a schedule all day tomorrow that we'll be meeting with people who, you know, many of whom are saying that they are going to roll up their sleeves in support. Now, we don't know if that's going to be the case or not, but I can say this, at least they're saying it, you know, and they're optimistic about what can happen with the school district. And you got to maintain that optimism. You have to, in spite of it all, because once you give up on it, it's done. The lady? Yes, ma'am, please.
Yes. Oh, can you hear me? Oh, wow. Good evening. Tanisha Johnson, Family and Community Empowerment Manager for Rock the Future. I just want to say a couple things. I'm wearing two hats tonight. First off, my husband and I, with our 5 children, work, live, play, and pray in the city. So we are definitely invested in the well-being of our children and families, our village, because we have children that are being raised in this community. I'm not originally from here. I'm originally from the Bronx, and I had to talk to Wade Norwood to get a real understanding as to how we got here. And if no one has had that conversation and really looked at the history of Rochester in terms of segregation, in terms of how the thruway, everything from how we got here and with the segregation and housing, we can go all the way there. But I think a piece to go with what this brother was saying in terms of what Rock the Future does in terms of us working with conveners and our collective impact work. What I wanted to say was the parent piece, the child care provider piece is so critical. And what I'm hearing from parents and from those around the table that work with parents is that there are things that come up they find out later, and this auditorium really should be packed. And I know efforts have been made by the district. I'm working with Ken Sayers. He's the director of OPE for RCSD, and we're looking at a strategic plan to look at how we can have family engagement, empowerment piece play out across the district in all of our schools. So if I have a child at Edison and a child at Monroe, as a parent, when I walk in, things should look consistent in terms of working with the liaison or whoever it is that's the go-to. But in terms of this information here, what I wanted to say is we need to look a little bit deeper in how we're empowering parents. So it's not just about engaging parents and having them at the table, but it's taking it a step further and empowering them, equipping them with information and armoring them with what they need to know so that every board meeting should be full. They can speak to the budget, and we do that piece at Rock the Future. But that's what we would be looking for in a superintendent is someone that's keeping that as a priority. someone that is really looking at how are we empowering families that have their babies in this district? How are we moving the needle with families lock in step with meeting our goals and our measurements? And I think if we look at that a little bit more and look at the candidates, I also believe in homegrown. I don't know why that's been such a challenge here, but we have some really great homegrown folks that would be incredible superintendents for this district. And I don't know if that's overlooked because there's areas of expertise that maybe they may be missing on their resume, but they certainly have the experience from being in the district and being in the community. But that's another area that I think gets often overlooked. I know one person in particular that would be a stellar candidate. So I think that if we look at not just the body of work that a superintendent is bringing, but really start asking those questions about implicit bias, about parent and family and community empowerment. How are we bringing the faith-based organizations to the table? How do we make our reach further so that we can have an auditorium full with such a critical decision? You know, my children are in urban suburban. If this was about their superintendent, we would have a difficult time. And they were in this district, by the way, so I will say that. Our option, given the times and things that were happening, was urban suburban. But if this was another district, it would not happen the way that it's happening here. So the onus is on all of us to do our part, and I'm not sure if the message is getting out enough, and we need to have a superintendent that resonates that message. We have a long way to go, but we do have some bright spots. We have an incredibly long way to go, though.
All right. One of the things I'll say is that the meeting is going out on the internet from the district, and so that might be one of the reasons why people might say, well, I don't have to go because I can see it, and that's why we're using the mics for you guys to talk so they can hear you at home and that type thing. But it would be good to have everybody here. Yes.
I actually have a couple questions. So we keep talking about one superintendent. Why does it have to be one superintendent, especially when history has shown us that this model is broke. It has not worked. So my frustration as a community member and educator in the community is it seems like I don't know whose decision it is, but it's the same model, this one figurehead. Why can't it be a mix of people or a group of people? And another question I have is, why does the deadline for this person or entity have to be July of this year? Many folks have brought up here that there are infrastructure pieces that are broken currently within the district. And it seems as if it's the same old thing of this, let's rush the process, push someone through with a very few candidates, and it'll be the same 2-year, 3-year thing. It's just repeating. And so, why does it have to be the same one superintendent model when we've seen that it doesn't work? It has not worked for this district.
Well, it may be that that superintendent may have to bring a team in here. And
but why can't that be our decision to do that? Why does someone have to be hired to say that? Why can't that be? Why are we looking at that at the creation level now before jumping into the process again when we know that it historically has not worked for this district to have one figurehead superintendent? And here we are again with the same broken no business would do business this way when something has not worked for 20 years. I literally grew up in Rochester, attended school. I don't think I've ever met a superintendent ever in that time. I actually was moved to urban suburban because of my parents being frustrated with the situation, but this is like watching the same movie again, and here I am 33 years old, and it's the same people, the same players, the same system, and it's even sitting here hearing people just keep talking about, shake the box up. Why are we doing it the exact same? and expecting a different result. That's the definition of insanity. And I'm sitting here feeling this is insane. Even of the people who are here, U.S. why it's the same. No one said anything different. We know what we need to do, but why are we doing the system needs to change. The system itself needs to change. The board, the superintendent, all of it is not working. Scrap it, put it in a fire and burn it and start something new. That's what I'm looking to hear from being here today. How can I will not support the same model. I won't support it. So I want to hear something new, or I'm gonna have to leave because this is. I'm like it's like I'm. Is this for real? It's like I can't even I have no words. We're talking about the same process, and it just doesn't make any sense.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
So the young brother's raising some very interesting questions. I wouldn't say that the whole model is broken, but I know what you mean, that we have to do some things fundamentally different. But let's be clear about how the system works. No superintendent is an island. Superintendents are not supermen or superwomen. They have teams. They already have teams. Do you know how many six-figure salaried people work at 131 West Broad Street who are part of the superintendent's team? Do you know? I'm talking about millions and millions of dollars. And sometimes when you watch them closely, it's like they're stumbling over each other. So the whole model is not broken, but parts of it definitely broken, definitely. The superintendent is a day-to-day manager. But that person, that individual has scores of people working under him or her. And they all are supposed to have specific functions. Just look at some of the job descriptions in this school district and watch the people who are supposed to be doing those jobs, and then you'll see an example of how the model is not congruent. Because what their job description says, as opposed to what you actually see them doing, is as different as night and day. But you're right. We got to examine this. And going back to what the other young brother up here was saying, and by the way, I never even introduced myself. I have skin in the game. We all have skin in the game, though. But I got a lot of skin in the game. He was here earlier. He walked out. He's a student right here at this school. So I'm a parent in the school district, an activist for 40 years in this community. But you're raising some critical questions. But what the young brother raised down here earlier was, he said so many things are wrong in this district. What does that inform us? It informs us that the only solution has to be grounded in systems approach. There's no other way to do this. It's got to be systems approach. In the school district, talking about Dr. Aquino's report, he says the thing that's supposed to be the strategic plan in this district is not even implementable. You can't even implement it. You know this thing you've been hearing about, the path forward and all of that stuff? Aquino's report says you can't even implement it. He said it hasn't even been completed yet. So you have to have a strategic plan, a coherent strategic plan that begins to cover all of those points. What you're doing with parents, what you're doing at the classroom level, what are administrators at central office doing. It's all in the plan, but there is no plan. So there's a quality that the superintendent absolutely has to have. He or she must know how to develop, along with others, a strategic plan, a surgical strategic plan. And you know what? When you have an adequate strategic plan, and I see Hank shaking his head. Hank was an administrator. He was a school, not principal. You were a superintendent? Yeah, so he's shaking his head because he knows this stuff. When you have an adequate strategic plan, no matter who comes and goes, the plan doesn't change. So that's what we must have. We're talking about parents. Let's never believe that it's the role of the superintendent alone to get more parents. It's all of our roles. Sharon is right. We got to knock on these doors together. And guess what? We can't go one time. We got to keep going back, keep going back. Look, let me tell you how bad things are. Most of our parents don't even know you're here. don't even know you're here, don't even know that there's a superintendent search process going on, have never heard of a distinguished educator, don't even know who Dr. Jaime Aquino is. That's how bad it is. This is an old, deep-seated crisis. So we can talk rhetorically about what has to happen, but I'm telling y'all, there's work going on right now. Now, I know our sister mentioned Wade Norwood, and I know Wade and respect him and all of that, but do you all know what his role is? Wade is a board of regents, is a member of the New York State Board of Regents. I gotta say it, and I would say it right to his face. Wade and T. Andrew Brown, the other regent who lives in this area, have been missing in action. Nobody's seen them until recently, since the state commissioner started rolling into town. The only appearances that they have made is with her. They should be here right now. Right? So Wade Norwood has a perspective about the historical conditions in this community, but there are others who, in my view, have a much more accurate perspective. In fact, the minister's father has the best perspective I've ever heard of what has happened in this school district and in this city historically. And that history is important. We need to know that history. It's very, very important. Because unless you have a holistic historical perspective of what got us here, you can't figure out how to solve this. You've got to place it in historical perspective. And I'll say this and quit. When you do place it in historical perspective, what you discover is that Rochester is not all that unique. That it has the same problems as Buffalo, as Syracuse, as Dayton, as Miami, as New York City, and so forth. So it has to do with the way that public education has been developed in this nation. This is not coincidental. This crisis is nationwide. It's a national crisis. Actually, ultimately, we need a national movement. But national movements are composed of strong local movements. So we literally need to build a movement. This is not rhetoric. We're talking about a critical mass of people who are very clear about the goals, the strategies that we want to implement. So you're not wrong. You're not wrong. But if I offer caution when you say just scrap the whole thing and start all over again, right? Because people say that, but they don't know what that means in practical terms. You're not wrong, though. There's certain parts of it that need to be scrapped. And look, I'm asking again, we're talking about we engage people today, the business community, the ministers and others and so forth. Where are they? And I'm not talking about just tonight. There's work going on. There's already work going on in the district. We're there. They haven't been around. They're not there. You're right about that too. It's the same people who keep showing up. Some of us know each other for decades. So, you know, we got to challenge people too. We got to challenge people and say, look, this is going on. There's a real team going on now. You can come to those meetings now. Just 752-1426. That's my phone number. If you want to know what's happening, we're real right now. But your points are well taken, and your points are well taken. I'll say this, and then I will stop talking. I would say to us, be careful with the idea that you have to be born and raised. That's important, but I wasn't born and raised, but I've been in this community about 60 years now. And listen, I've been active almost all 60 years, almost. And listen, look, I taught in the school district for 23 years. I know something about education in Rochester. I also teach at the college level. I've been an adjunct instructor at State University of New York at Brockport for 19 years. And I'm not like tooting my horn. That's not what I'm doing. I'm one of many in this community who have expertise. But I'm telling you, people talk the talk, but they don't really want our expertise because we talk a little too loud. We might bang on a table, get somebody upset, scare people away, all that foolishness. But let's talk issues. So I appreciate what the young people are saying in particular, but I just offer a little caution, right? Like, let's not say, let's throw it all away, but let's say, let's get this thing right. I like it when he said, I want to hear something different, I'm going home. I've been hearing this, I'm 31, right? I've been hearing this since I was a child.
Well said, sir. Thank you.
Lady first, and then I'm going to take anyone.
I want to respond to something real quick, Professor, because you were my professor at Brockport, Elder Eagle. But I do want to say the onus is on each one of us individually. Now, the point I made about Wade Norwood was that until he came to our class and provided history that many don't know, even people that are from here are not equipped with that history. I didn't know how deliberate and intentional in terms of the segregation, the poverty, and the history and all of that. So, you know, the onus, though, is on all of us to equip our parents, those that we work with, those in the community. You've been here for a long time. You've been doing the work. I've been doing the work. Everyone in here, we see each other at some of the same meetings. And we all have a responsibility to do what we need to do. And we've been doing this thing for a very long time. I'm not originally from here either, but I've been here for about 20 years. My kids are. So, you know, I say that to say we also have to understand that it will take different approaches, multi-layered, multifaceted approaches. I do have to say there are things that are being done, Rock the Future being one of them, in terms of systemic approaches to the things that need to be changed. But again, I'm also here wearing two hats, because I'm here as a resident of the city, as a parent, and a community member, and also a person that works for an incredible initiatives that's making changes, lock in step with the district, and also holding some places and people accountable for what needs to happen in our district. But that's everyone's responsibility. So we can do but so much, but we definitely need to be doing more. But I just want to say that we all need to own our stuff. We need to own our stuff.
Thank you.
I would like to have anyone that hasn't had a chance have their opportunity back in, that's fine.
Okay, I think we're missing something. I think what we're missing is that education is not about politics. Education is about education. Learning is about learning. First, politics is there. But if we don't communicate ideas and argue or come to a realization about what's true or what's better or what's worse, then we just go round and round in circles. If we want change, change is change. Visualizing and letting it resonate in your head. What does it mean? It's not just a word. Let me play with words. And I also want to ask you a question. Can we reach you? Is there email? Okay, you'll give it. Is that on the district webpage or?
It should be on the district webpage, but we have information that we'll share with you where we can be reached.
Okay, I'll just be another minute.
Okay.
I made this incredible discovery. Take the word teach. I believe it's spelled Teach. I could be wrong. What? Okay, thank you. If you turn the same letters around, I get another word. There may be several. Cheat. Cheat. In other words, if we want to teach, we have to work at it. And if teachers work at it, and politicians, and if you people work at the communication process over and over again, whatever it takes, so that something resonates in someone's head, and they say, I was wrong, I was right, let me think about it. We all have ideas, but maybe we can transmit some of them to you, and maybe some good will come out of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
First and foremost, I just want to say, it's my phone.
Crack it up, bro.
first and foremost, I just want to say, just because you're not born in Rochester, I didn't mean it in that sense. I just meant that if you're not connected to this community in some way, shape, or form, where your roots are here, or you have the betterment of Rochester on your mind, then there's an issue. And for the majority of the time, if we're paying someone out of state, with this weather is terrible. Let's all just get that out of the way. This weather is terrible. It's cold. This is not a place where a lot of people want to settle long term, you know. And so if you're not really committed to Rochester, that's what I meant by that. So you just have to take into consideration the people that are here, the people that are actually from Rochester and are committed here and are still here. So I didn't mean anything by that. To your point, sir, you know, now this is what I think, that they're trying to speed this process so much because of the budget being done. Now you have deputy superintendents of administration and of teaching, so they do have help. It's not like the onus is only on them. A lot of people don't really know that, but the reason why the search is probably going so fast is because of the budget situation. And then if you happen to, you know, listen to Barbara Dean, if you happen to, you know, listen to any of her past recent interviews, she wanted to quote unquote, you know, resign so they can take over before the new budget. So to me, that's, you're getting pushed out before the new budget. So my thing is, the Board of Education is who usually oversees this process. For the last 10 years and 5 superintendents, they have not gotten it done. There were 4 board members in here, 2 of them left. Why weren't all board members in here? Why hasn't the president of the Board of Education said anything tonight? And he is sitting in here. Why hasn't he spoken? These things, I've seriously watched this man on his phone. Why hasn't he said anything? Why isn't he speaking up? Why wasn't he at the last board meeting on Broad Street? These things are an issue. Sir, he can speak for himself. He's a grown man. These things need to be addressed from the top down. I don't need to go to a web page and not see any cohesiveness. I need to figure out a plan on how these kids are going to get the help that they need. You have to be able to connect. Now, sir, teaching is teaching. Learning is learning. Education is education. But if I can't connect to you, if I can't engage, if I don't know why you're not showing up to school, is because you're hungry, or you're not sleeping at night, or you're trying to find a place to sleep at night, that's an issue. So first things first is connecting to these kids and understanding why some of them that are struggling are actually struggling. The second thing is getting these kids help that they actually need, because that's one thing that we're not doing. We're not getting the proper help. Yeah, we might get them a counselor or social worker, whatever the case may be, but at the same time, if there's no connection, if I can't trust you, then we're not gonna get anywhere. So a lot of these programs have to be in place and be aided for these kids to feel safe. Safety and security is an issue, it's the #1 concern. Now, if we have teachers that are qualified, just because you're qualified doesn't mean you're called to do a job. You may be the best teacher in the world, but if you're scared of a 6-foot African-American student male, then there's an issue. So at the same time, all of these things are in place. Politics play a big role, because if you're from the middle of some state that's never seen black people, now you have all these black kids in there, that's an issue. So if you're constantly kicking me out of class or whatever the case may be, that's an issue. So politics matter, racism matters, the budget matters, yes, programs matter. We need a superintendent that's going to get in there and get dirty, get their hands dirty. As simple as that. We don't have to keep playing this game. We have to, there's so many things from the top down. We have to disrupt what's going on. We need somebody that's gonna get the community in here, not try, get, not try. We can try all day. We've been trying for the last 10 years. When is the community gonna come in? Who's gonna come in place? Why are you hiring the superintendent? I need to know what you're gonna do. What are your plans? I don't care about your qualifications. What are your plans? What plans do you have in place to change this? The budget, what programs? You can read all day long. Google's available. Look at the state of the city school district. Look at the budget. I personally went over the budgets for the last 2 years. Look at them, see what's wrong.
Sir.
Then devise a plan.
One of the things that's going to happen, to your point, once the board selects the 3 finalists, they will each spend a day in Rochester. They will be open to these kind of meetings all day long. So now you will have the opportunity to say, what's your plan? they're going to have to address your each and every one of them are going to have to address your issues. And so it, I think someone said that last time people weren't given an opportunity to meet with the finalists or whatever. I don't know. All I know is this time you will be given an opportunity to meet with the finalists before the board makes a final decision. Then you have an opportunity to weigh in with the board and say, hey, person A had no plan. Person B had a plan. And you will have a chance to Google search and find out, or either call somebody. No matter where somebody comes from, somebody's going to know them. I was in a meeting today, and the lady came up after the meeting. She said, well, where are you from? I told her, from Savannah, Georgia. She said, my husband is from there. And this young lady is from Meta, which is just a skip and a hop from Savannah. So no matter where you go, you're gonna find people that know you or of you or where you've been who can make a phone call and say, hey, did this superintendent ever come around to the schools? Somebody might say, well, hey, he was around there every day.
With all due respect, I understand that. And yes, in retrospect, in a perfect world, that'll be okay. But that's not what's happening today. Like, sure, I can make a phone call. My dad's from Augusta, Georgia. My grandma, born and raised in Florida. Like, so at the same time, you can make a phone call, but let's be real. I need definites. Like, we can make a phone call. Hey, did this guy come around? Yes, he came around all the time. Same time, if he gets up here, he doesn't have to make that happen. He does not have to come around. And so what I'm saying is that if candidate A has a bad plan and candidate B has no plan and candidate C has a better plan, that doesn't do us justice. We need definites. We need definites. And that's the issue. So I don't want to ramble too much longer. Two ladies had their hands up.
Appreciate your point, sir.
Folks, we're getting to the point where we're going to try to wrap up. We can't have but we are going to still try to give everybody an opportunity for the last word. I'm just going to say there's going to be an end sooner or later, and that's fine. So let's see who else would raise their hands, and we'll conclude with anyone that raised their hands. We're going to go through that group. Fair enough? And Reverend, you'd like to be?
We're going to let the board chair go last. No, you don't want to go.
Well, you can respond, but the fact is we asked board members to not participate, and he's just honoring what we asked. But, well, no, we asked, first off, we think board members, if they want to come out and listen to everything, that's fine. But this isn't the role where they're supposed to be participating as much as listening. So I'm just telling you, we've been doing this for a while, and it just is the way we organize it. So it's no disrespect to him. He's just doing like the other board members were here. They're just observing. Their point is they're just in the process. They brought us in to try to capture the voices of the community. Their opportunity and their responses has a lot to do with what's going to happen as they follow the process and they have the day in the city. And that's where the response comes. So I don't mean to disrespect anything you said, sir. I'm just trying to talk to you about the process. That's all.
All right.
I'd like to say good evening to everyone. First and foremost, I think it's very important to recognize ourselves that we took time to come out and to participate. Give yourselves a hand. That's very important. We're here tonight, and it's good to see all of you here. A couple things about the questions that we were to consider. All due respect to this process, as community leaders, pastors, parents, grandparents, we participated in this process before, and I just want to say this very quickly. I was on the search team for Dr. Janey's selection. And I'd like to share with you all from the inside, which I would hope that would not happen this time. We were working on 24 candidates that were given to us at the Straff Allen. We started about 6 in the evening, and we had all been given a stack of folders to look through. We were there about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and a tall gentleman from Xerox walked in and said, "You can shut down the process. We have our candidate." We were all in complete shock and dismay because our time was wasted to be a part of a process that was supposed to be community-based. What happened is that we learned that the people who were supposed to be independent of the process had already traveled to Boston to meet with the finalist, and they positioned 2 other finalists to stand next to him when we ended up at School of the Arts, and then the rest was history. I think it's important that you all understand, too, that what you sometimes profess that is a process is really not a process. It's a opportunity to sandbag the community as if we're not aware of how these shams really work. The strength of a process should come from the community that pays for it. This is not the board's money. This process is not right because the community shouldn't be out here talking at you. We should all be working together to make sure that the money that is being spent is going to accomplish everything that we need to do. And we did say to this board that this is not the way that we should have gone to get the results that the community here needs. And it's still not too late. But let me say to those of us who are here, the strength of what we really need to do with the 3 questions that were beautifully laid out to us tonight is that the real change that needs to be made, and you'll have an opportunity to do that in June, is at the board level. If you keep re-electing the same people, you'll keep getting the same failure that we have experienced longer than the last 10 or 15 years. It's been over 40 years of struggle in this city where we have not reached some reachable objectives. And what I would like to challenge those of us who are here, we have a primary coming up in June. Now the community has to do a gut check. We get what we get based on who we put in. And the challenge we have is if we want change to take place, it has to start at the top. And we have to demand tonight in this search leadership and participation. We ask that these meetings not be held away from the community. They should be in the community, communicating with parents who need to be brought into this process, our churches, our libraries, our community centers, our synagogues, where our people are going to be. And we still continue to bring people to a school that's on the far end of the city. And our parents are on bus lines, Uber, cabs, walking, trying to get rides to these meetings. We have money to bus people to these meetings if we really wanted them here. We don't provide daycare. We don't provide food. We don't do anything that is inviting to the constituent that needs to be a part of this. It's not about anybody else but the parents, grandparents that have children in this district. And it's a travesty that this district will spend money on themselves to eat the top of the line food, and half of it will go in the garbage, or they'll give it to staff. And the very parents and grandparents and children that need to be a part of this discussion, where are the students? You're in a school. You're in a school. Why weren't the students given credit to be here as an assignment to challenge them to be a part of this? So there are a lot of things that we have offered to make this a win-win situation for this community. We're not listened to. You all are going to give us a superintendent. You all are going to give us a superintendent that we don't want. That happened 10 years ago, and that superintendent didn't stay not because he was not qualified. He didn't stay because the district didn't want to pay him. We don't want another superintendent that you all pick for us. This process finally should bear a process that says that the community had a stake in the selection, because once you all are gone, we're left with the same problem we have had over the 4 or 5 turnover of superintendents. And I just want to let you know straight up that there are a lot of people out of this room and in this room that were a part of these processes. The only thing that changed this time, we didn't get a chance to be at Strath Allen to get our jackets and kind of rub shoulders with you guys. And let me just say this for the record. The gentleman that came in the room and told us selection has been made money off of the process that could not be shared with parents and students and so forth. This kind of stuff has to stop, because we have parents that can't get support to get to their buildings, to help their children. They can't even get jobs in this system. So I hope after this process is done, and I hope that the board members that are present, they can give us another superintendent, but they know in their guts, some of them who've been here longer than our newly elected board member. They know that this process is not what this community needs, but they didn't have the guts to say, we're going to do it the right way this time. But in all due respect, we thank you for this opportunity and the time. But please, ladies and gentlemen, if you're here, I'm not saying that I told you so, but I am saying that unless we get our arms around this process and not only have our say, but we really got to work together to help make the way. Thank you.
Okay. So I was also sitting on a superintendent search committee a number of years ago, and can echo those feelings. My point is really to you guys as well, and to the board president, and that's to ask you to look at what has a person actually done rather than what they say. In my experience, we were really good at interviewing and getting people that had the gift of gab and could tell us marvelous plans. We need someone who's actually can say, yes, I have parents filling an auditorium when there's a district-wide event. We need to, or maybe not an auditorium, maybe it's out at the community center. My former career, I was a professional recruiter for technical people. I made them do technical problems. I didn't ask them, well, what do you think about computers? What's your philosophy? I love the fact that you're going to have people come here for a day, but don't just have them come here and talk. Have them come and have them interact with students. Have them come and have them interact with teachers, and let us see how they actually do. And then also, don't tell us we got to do all our own Google searching. We're paying you guys a lot of money to do that Google searching. So you should be giving us good information about these people.
Let me clear that up. We're not telling you to do that. We're going to do that. But what we're saying is what the gentleman said right here, we all got to be involved in this process. Now, you don't have to do anything because we're going to check them out. But I check them out too. If they were coming to work with my kids, I'd check them out. Now, hey, I just would. I'm not saying you have to, but that's just an option.
Good evening. I will never try to match your articulateness. Quite incredible. My name's Hank Rubin. I am former Deputy State Superintendent in Ohio when you were in Ohio, I think.
Yes, sir.
And former Dean of Education at a couple of institutions. Just retired from the Community Foundation. I'm a little bit younger, I think, than the three of you are, but right in the age bracket. And I want to encourage that part of the message today is that our paradigm may be broken. Our way of approaching this may be overdone. The message of our senior gentleman here, I think, matches the message of the two younger gentlemen who spoke earlier. We can't expect to force what's going on in Rochester into the old paradigm of how we go about doing a search. I have seen 100 superintendent searches, and it sounds like this is the structure of every one I've seen. I'd ask if you were moved by his thoughts and energized by their concerns, that the three of you recognize that the job of this search, and the board members, with all due respect to the board members present, that you all recognize that we're called on at this moment not to try to use a broken paradigm, to look at the possibility of how we structure this differently. Every time you've responded to one of the comments by one of the other speakers, you have forced it into the old paradigm. Over and over again, it's the time you'll get with the finalists. It's the moment you'll get to see him or her face to face. It's the moment of dealing with the structure we're going to give back to you for you to be able to either anoint or not anoint it. I'm saying the system is broken. The structure hasn't worked. At this moment, use your incredible experiences. Board members, use your incredible power to think about this as being a moment where the structure, the system, having been broken, has to be assumed to be put together in a new and different way. Don't look for a superintendent. Look for an answer that may be very different than the historic paradigm.
Thank you. 1 minute. Okay, you got a half a minute. Oh, well, he hadn't spoken, so let's hear from him. No, that's okay. We'll hear you.
Hi, my name is Tom. I'm actually a student at a local community college. I'm going to be working at East this semester through a couple of different things. I wasn't asked to be here at all, but I thought I'd come and just see and watch and experience it, as this is obviously a problem. So I had a couple questions for you guys. Just checking some data, I guess. You guys said this is broadcasting online, so that's why maybe there's not as many people here. Do you have any number for how many people are viewing online right now? Can you see that or no? Can you see how many people are viewing online? Okay, gotcha. And then earlier someone said the city school district is one of the districts in the nation with like 20,000 students plus. Is that correct?
One of the larger districts.
Rochester City, just the city school district, not the outside. Okay. So who knows how many people are watching online, but by the amount of people here, and if there's 20,000 students, my math could be wrong, but that should be about 40,000 parents. Even so, and everyone has said this, there needs to be a lot more community participation. The first time I've ever come to something like this, and I was a little shocked to see so few people here. All the opinions, everything have been great, and it's really nice to see that there are people coming out and who are passionate about this. But I would say that is a big challenge, is much more community participation, because if not everyone's on board for it, then it seems like you're almost setting yourself up for something that may not be successful. With that also, you guys have talked about a lot of your successes. How about any failures? How about any failures in maybe not finding the right superintendent or putting the wrong one in, and how have you dealt with that approach if it has happened?
We've been fortunate, but I'm going to say each time we're going to try to do our best. But we have been fortunate that we've been able to have people stay. So you asked that question. However, if we were asked that question and we had one, we would tell you.
You know we love you. Give me the business card, stuff.
Have any particular certain affiliation with the school district, but as someone who's going to be available to be an educator in a couple years, you know, this may be a possible job placement type thing. So as you guys are doing this, and there's immediate and direct impacts of this, there are also people who are a couple of ripples away, maybe people like myself and my other schoolmates who are paying attention to this as well, as it's something that's happening in our community. So it's just another I don't know, motivation to get it right and do it the right way.
Sir, we need good teachers. The children need them, so stick with it.
Like you said, 30, half a minute, because it's time to go.
Appropriate benediction for the minister, okay.
You know, in finalizing this is the first time, and I'm going to take this back to the ministers of God and the people in the backyard. This is the first time I felt, besides the group Real, that there was some sort of emotional satisfaction. Now, the reason I say this is because many of the people in the backyards, and we did a survey in the backyard, you all don't know, we the little people. But many of the people in the backyard feel like their voices are not being heard. Many of the people in the backyard don't feel comfortable coming to a meeting, because every time they come to a meeting, it's like we say all of this stuff, we share our complaints, but when it comes to the board and the people in position, nothing is done. So a lot of people don't come to the meeting. I'm going to share a brief, I got like 20 seconds. I'm going to share a brief. I was sent to one of the city officials after we voted them in. And when I got to the door, their representative said to me, she don't see people on one-on-ones. We're talking about city officials. I won't say who it is, because that's not who I am. That's not of God. But she said, their representative said, we don't see one-on-ones. And it really behooved me. I took it back to the people in the backyard, and we prayed for that person, because it was not healthy. We done voted you in, and the only time we see you is when you're giving us chicken and hot dogs and you're ready to be voted in. But once you're in position, we don't even see you anymore. So what I'm saying to you, not to hurt anyone, bash anyone, but we're tired. And this is the first time, thank God for you all coming in, but thank God for y'all getting real along with Real back there, because we need somebody that's going to hear us and work with us. We've said it all. So in closing, we really appreciate you, and we really appreciate you all for coming. But now we need to have faith. Without works is dead. So we need faith and work. We got to come together. We love you. God bless you. Peace.
the benediction.
So y'all can say whatever you want, but I'm telling you, the process is bogus. It's not real. It's bogus. To the president's, school board president's credit, he had proposed at the beginning of this, before they even hired the search firm, that each board member should choose 2 members from the community who were grounded in the community, who had a history of working in education and so forth, and that group, 14 people, would represent an advisory group that would be a part of every aspect of your search process, so that people from the community would have been at the decision-making tables. Those of you who were at the board meeting the night when Commissioner Davis spoke and she held the paper over the microphone and said this would be the voice of the community, it will. Because we're not at decision-making tables, we thank God for Reverend Davis, because we know that we will understand. I mean, we understand that certain things are confidential, and I'm sure she won't break that confidentiality, but she will give us a first-hand account of whether or not your progress was bogus. And I guarantee you it will be. I even feel like the district hired you before. If they didn't, it was somebody operating it almost, no, they never did. Look, the minister's talking about a process that he was a part of. There was another process, the one that chose Jean-Claude Brizard. Y'all don't remember that process? They brought the 3 candidates right here in this room. They were Jean-Claude Brizard, Carlinda Purcell, and I can't remember the other gentleman's name. I believe he was from somewhere in the South. The community clearly expressed a desire for Dr. Purcell. Clearly. I was right here in this room. But who did they choose? Jean-Claude Brizard. Why did they choose him? Because Adam Urbanski said he was the best candidate. In fact, Adam Urbanski was boasting that he helped recruit Jean-Claude Brizard to this school district, and then ended up having to work with us to run him out of town. Ran him to Chicago because he was no good. And I'm telling you, I'm not sure I understood this gentleman's question, but if his question was, have you ever had a candidate who didn't work out, and your answer was no, and you said you had 1,000 searches, that's fantasy. That's fantasy. So I'm not sure if that's how he posed the question, but that's what I thought I heard. Did you ever choose a candidate that didn't work out? And your answer was no, but you did 1,000 searches? That's fantasy.
Let me again say thank you to everyone who's been out here tonight. Okay, I'm coming.
Just ask, there were so many superintendents, and they've all failed. Why? Why couldn't they do their job? Who controls the city school system? Are it the politicians, the school board, the union? Someone is controlling something, and it's not working. If all these superintendents couldn't do their job, then there's a problem that we together, every race, color, creed, together have to for the children. Thank you.
Yeah. I just want to ask 2 very quick questions so that people here can continue to be part of the process. You mentioned the online survey. Could you tell us how we access that? And also, you're going to tell us how to reach the search committee. If you'd share that information with us before we all leave tonight. Thank you very much.
The online survey is on the school system website. It should be prominently placed, and again, just click a. I would assume it's Rochester City Public Schools website homepage.
We have to know. rcsdk12.org. It is not that hard. It is not that hard. rcsdk12.org. This is something that somebody who's hiring should know. At the same time, we cannot sit around. And like I said last week, and from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take by force. So we have to forcefully advance with the school district. We can't just, this is nonsense. I'm 29 years old, this is nonsense. This is crazy. For all of us to sit around, I'm not saying that we're all sitting around like this is not an issue. We're getting fed something, and the reason why we're getting fed something is because we're taking it like it is okay. If you're doing our hiring, you should know where the survey is at. I shouldn't have to Google where the survey is. If you're doing the hiring, and no offense to anybody that's not here or that should be here, I should know what's already currently in place. I shouldn't have to worry about my nieces and nephews. Or when I decide to have children, my children's education. 5 and 10 is not ideal for anybody. So for us to be here and not really get anything accomplished, nonsense. For the community, we have to get them in here. The community should have a choice on who they say should be the superintendent. Along with you guys, along with the board, along with the keynote, if I pronounce his name wrong, I do apologize. Collectively, we should all be taken care of. Because this doesn't do it. And this does not get it done. I apologize for interrupting. I honestly do apologize, but that's something that you guys should know. You're doing the hiring. That's the deadline. I know that. You guys should know that. It should be in place. We are not children. This is ridiculous. Your resume and what you've done, I'm not disrespecting that. This is you don't believe in your own product. Really? Let's fix it. No matter who started it, have to blast something out of the news. Now tomorrow, if some of you aren't aware, there's another special meeting at Wilson. Tomorrow at Wilson. Thursday at Wilson.
Folks, I'm going to take the liberty not to have the final word.
We love you. Thank you. Got it. And we'd like to thank everyone, because everything everyone said is valid and very important, but we're getting ready to close. Can we all stand, please? And we're going to say a real quick prayer of traveling mercy. Dear Heavenly Father, we come together and we thank you for everyone here, everyone that showed up. Father, we ask you to bless everyone here. We're asking you for your power. We're asking you to bless the facilitators and give them traveling mercy, and thank you for them being here. Father, the listeners, out in social media? Will you help them? But Master God, we ask you to bring everybody together. Help us to work together. And will you bring the people from the backyards to the front yards? Help us in the city school district as well as the parents and children, because the common good is the children. Father, we ask you to give us traveling mercy. We thank you for your power. Thank you for your love. Thank you for this unity in Jesus' name. Everybody say amen. Amen.
Hey, folks, the school system is closed tomorrow for all the children, and because of the weather, and the evening session tomorrow will also not be taking place because of the weather situation. Excuse me? No, all during the day, we're going to do the focus groups. Yeah, the only thing they were worried about is tomorrow evening. So we're going to be there, and if you're scheduled for the focus groups tomorrow, we will be there. But the evening session tomorrow, because of the weather, which is quite severe, has been canceled.